now we're recording, so this will be available later today for future watching and rewatching and sharing with anybody you think might find it useful. If you need the closed captioning, feel free to enable that at the bottom of your screen. You should see a button that says Show Captions. And if during our time together you have questions or comments for our speaker, feel free to use the chat feature. And Dawn, our speaker, I will watch that for you, so you don't have to worry about watching the chat. And if you'll be willing to answer some questions for us, that would be fantastic. So those are all of the housekeeping notes. And so now I'm happy to introduce our speaker for today, Dawn Crouch from the Aging Parent Answer Team. November is, of course, National Caregiver Month and also Alzheimer's Awareness Month. Of course, here at the KU ADRC, we think of prioritizing caregivers and treating, preventing, and curing Alzheimer's disease every month, and especially so in November. And that is why we are especially excited to have Dawn with us today to talk about her work with the Aging Parent Answer Team. I know in my career as a social worker working with families, caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's, there are lots and lots of questions, and it always feels very reassuring to know you have someone who's got answers, and not just answers, but the right answers. And we met Dawn in August at our in-person/Zoom weekly webinar with Sonia Jury, who wrote the great book, Mom Forgot My Birthday. And Dawn said that she had information that she thought you would find helpful. And I said, yeah, you do. So here we are on November 14th to hear from Dawn. So Dawn, with that, I will turn it over to you. And thank you for being here. Look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. You can hear me just fine?
Just fine. Looks great. Sounds
Perfectly.
great.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. Very happy to be here today. I started the Aging Parent Answer team 7 years ago, and it was as a result of my day job where I'm the owner of Safe Oasis Insurance. And I had a couple of clients who applied for long-term care insurance, but something had changed already in their health and they weren't approved. And it really underscored to me that a lot of people wait just a little bit too long to get started on planning because they don't know where to get answers. And the last place you want to turn when you're just curious about something is to a salesperson, because not only do we try to solve the problem, but if you're not ready to buy, we're just going to keep checking in with you to see if you are. And that being on that list can just have a real kind of yucky feeling. So I started to have this idea percolate in the back of my mind that I wanted to find a way to just help people get some answers so that they could plan ahead on their own schedule. So the Aging Parent Answer team consists of myself, and I talk all things insurance. We've got an estate planning attorney, Kirsten Schroeder Larson, and she answers all of our legal questions. What's a will? What's a trust? What about these power of attorney documents I keep hearing about, right? We have a senior focused realtor, Terry Monrad. She's with Caldwell's Distinctive Properties, I believe is the name of her company. And she's certified in helping seniors sell a house that they've been in for a very long time. That's a particular challenge. And Peggy Schultz is the third member. She's the owner of a company called Resettle Me, and they're downsizers and senior move specialists. So the big questions she faces is how much stuff can I bring with me to my new home? And what do I do with everything that can't come along for the ride? And then our final specialist is Brandy Golster, and she is with Dedicated Senior Medical for Seniors, and it's a senior focused primary care facility. So, real interesting mix of the five of us knowing all different kinds of spheres that all interlace to make life possible. So, we have local events here in the Kansas City area about 6 to 8 times per year. And you can find out about those on our Facebook page, the Aging Parent Answer Team. Or if you want to sign up for our newsletter, we do send a newsletter 2 or 3 times a year with our upcoming events and some helpful tips and questions and answers that we've given at our recent events. So our whole reason for doing this is just to help families prepare better and prepare sooner. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's always later than we think it is. Any questions for me, Kelly, about any of that? Or does anyone in the audience have any questions?
Yeah, Dawn, what kinds of questions do you feel best equipped to answer?
Yeah, I would say the number one question that sort of reaches all five of us that we get asked every single event is how do I start the conversation with my parents? Or if you are the aging parent, how do I start this conversation about care with my children? And the number one thing is nobody wants it to be awkward, but it is because we're talking about the changes of life and the things we're all going to have to go through. And when we're the one aging, it's the first time that we're going through all of this. So we don't know what we're doing, right? And if you're the child or the adult child of someone who's getting closer to being elderly, this is the first time they're helping you as well. So it's always the first time. And we are always scrambling for resources and answers. But for me, the number one thing I like to remind people is that at the heart of what you want to see happen, there are surely some tender spots, some things that I like to call never evers. So when I ask someone if they're lucky enough to still have their parents with us and they say no, and then they start to tell their story of how that all unfolded, some things went well, some things might not have gone well. But in the end, you end up coming out with a feeling of, I don't want these specific things to happen. And is there anything I can do now to make sure that they don't happen? So some of those never evers might be, I never ever want to run out of money. I never ever want to leave my own home, if at all possible. I never ever want my children to fight. And that's a huge one because I'm sure a lot of the people watching on the call have been involved with caregiving to some extent. It is never, ever possible to divide that evenly between siblings or between even all the people that step up to help. There's no way to make things even and equal, and sometimes fighting as a result. So, having a good plan for what you want to see happen when your health changes helps preserve relationships too. So it can help protect your care choices. It can help you better use your finances. It can help with those relationships. So that how to have the conversation, how to get started question is really something we hear frequently. And the answer that we give to that is that it's best to do it all in one short burst. And this is what I learned with my own family. My father sat us all down, and it was just around that Thanksgiving time when we were all gathered geographically in the same location. And it wasn't on the holiday, but he sat down and he had an egg timer. And he said, we are going to set this timer for 1 hour, and we are going to
Hmm.
have the most uncomfortable conversation we have ever had as a family. And we're going to talk about it all. We're going to put it all out there. And at the end, when this timer goes off, we're going to stop talking about that. We're going to go for pizza and just be a family again. But we have got to get through this discussion of what I want to see happen and what you want to see happen. And I was shaking in my boots, like, what is he about to talk to us about? Like, what's about to happen? And he just started talking about his wishes for care, who was going to be in charge of finances if he lost the ability to do that, who would be making medical decisions, where he wanted to be buried, whether he wanted to be cremated or buried. And he just went through all this list of things, told us where the will was, gave us an overview of what was going to happen. But it was just like this major end of life conversation. And at the end, the timer went off and we went for pizza. And I kind of took all that information and kind of stuffed it down. I was like, oof, that was a little uncomfortable. But you know what happened is a year later, my father passed away unexpectedly. And in retrospect, that conversation, which was one of the most uncomfortable conversations we ever had, was a tremendous gift to each of us because we knew immediately what he wanted and what to do. And if something had happened and he, let's say, had a stroke or something and lost his ability to communicate, we would have known what his wishes were. So as a family, it got rid of so much potential guilt, and we had an action plan for what happens next. So the best way to start that conversation is to basically make the statement of, we're going to do this, and it might be uncomfortable, but it's not going to last forever, and it's important.
Very good. Don, we have a question in the chat.
Sure,
What age is too late to plan for long-term care insurance? And the
sure.
questioner's mom just passed without long-term care insurance and without a will, and is
Okay.
wanting to plan for their own long-term care needs.
Yes, yes. So there's two answers to that. One is a very technical answer. We can sell traditional long-term care policies to age 80. And on the annuity products that have long-term care payouts, we can go to age 85. But most people will have something change with their health some point that will make it impossible to get coverage. And for a lot of people, that's way before age 80 or 85. So most of my clients that come to me to talk about long-term care insurance are somewhere between 45 and 65. Now, there's people that we can plan with afterwards, especially if they're in great health. Absolutely, we can write policies to 80 or 85, but there's sort of a sweet spot, and it often happens not long after our own parents pass away. And we've sort of seen the outcome of their planning. And if they had long-term care, if it made a difference, most people are like, you know what, I need to get my own policy. I need to get that in order. And for those that, unfortunately, like the person who asked the question, they didn't have long-term care, maybe you're thinking, is there a better way to do this? And three things come into focus. You realize, hey, I could get lucky and live a long life too. And with that long life comes some challenges, and I might need some help getting in and out of bed or getting through my daily routine. The second is that you realize all of your other financial plans are on track. You're saving for retirement. Your kids are going to be able to go to college. You're paying off your debt, and you've got a little bit of room left in that budget. And the third thing is you're still healthy. So when those three things kind of coalesce, that's the perfect moment to buy long-term care insurance. And it generally falls somewhere between 45 and let's say 70.
That's really helpful to know that there's a specific age. I'm not sure I was aware of that.
Mhm.
I've typically answered that question around diagnoses and changes in
Yes.
ability to stay at home. And I think it's really useful to know that there's a specific age to focus on. So thank you for that, John. Um,
Yes.
I noticed the name, of course, of your organization is the Aging Parents Answer Team, but I imagine that you might also hear from families in other configurations, maybe sibling caregivers or grandparents
Yes.
or neighbors or chosen family. So can you talk a
Yes.
little more about that?
Yeah, yeah. We've done events at colleges and at sororities and um, at churches, private companies. The one I thought would be the least helpful was actually for a chiropractic school, and everyone in the class was going to be 20 to 30 years old. And I thought they're going to be too young to really care about what we're talking about. And I was so impressed with them because they were helping their parents care for their grandparents, and they were very engaged in this discussion. And especially probably because they were chiropractors and they were all focused about health and aging well, they asked some phenomenal questions. So while we say it's the aging parent answer team, think of it more of living well, aging well, dying well, or dying as well as we can, with our own agency and having things go as much as possible the way we want them to.
That's great. And I know you mentioned, Dawn, that you've had a lot of events recently in the Kansas City area. Do you have a
Mhm.
geographical boundary that you're most likely to be able to serve?
Simply because all five of us, like it's our passion project, the Aging Parent Answer Team. So it's not our day job. And we all live and work here in the Kansas City metro. So we do events here locally. But if you need resources and you call one of us on the team, I know insurance agents in other states. I'm personally licensed in 14 states, so I have a big footprint. But let's say our estate planning attorney, she's going to be working with Kansas and Missouri clients exclusively. But she's got attorney friends in Colorado and in Arkansas and all the different surrounding states. So if you don't know where to start with a question, give the aging parent answer team a call and we will help you figure out who in the community can help you or get you to those resources as soon as possible. Because no one knows where to turn when these things happen, right?
That's true. I
Yeah.
wondered, Dawn, if you could talk a bit about, I think all of us on the call today have certainly a vested interest in caring for loved ones with cognitive changes.
Hmm.
Is there any tips you might offer to our audience about that role, whether it's caring for someone with a cognitive change or experiencing a cognitive change themselves? Are there any tips or guidance you might offer to us to think about?
I think the biggest tip is that even if both of your parents have had Alzheimer's, you can still get a policy yourself. And I run into that a lot where people think, oh, well, it's in my family, so I probably can't get long-term care insurance. And that's not true. You, when you go through underwriting and apply for a product, we look at you in that moment of time in your health right now in this little snapshot. And if you don't have any diagnosis and you can pass the telephone interview where they do some cognitive screening with you can get a policy. So I think that's the biggest misconception that's out there. I also would like to encourage anyone that does have long-term care insurance to review their policy and figure out what the parameters are to trigger a claim specific to your policy and start it as soon as possible. I know there's a tendency to sort of think of this as this little pocket of money that maybe, we don't know how long this is going to last. So maybe we should just try to get by without it and save it for something. And the reality is sometimes those early years are the hardest. And this purpose of this long-term care insurance was to make these years as easy as possible to pay for all the additional care. So my heartfelt plea with anyone who's got a long-term care policy is let's trigger that claim and let's go ahead and try to get every dollar that we possibly can out of your policy. If we exhaust your policy, we win,
Hmm.
right? If you leave any money left in there at the end, the insurance company wins. And I, as your agent, I don't want that. I want you to win. And if you've got a 4-year benefit or a 5-year benefit and you're worried that you might need care for longer than that, that 4 or 5 years while your policy is paying out gives you the opportunity to move other things around and to work with an estate planning attorney and an elder law attorney to maybe get ready to be on Medicaid when you do run out of money. So,
Very good. Okay, we've
yeah.
got another question and a comment in the chat I want to highlight.
Okay.
If you attain insurance in one state, is it transferable?
Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. And Mr. Holtis, thank you for your encouragement. Mr. Eldine Holtis says, first of all, I'm 92, which is wonderful. Never too early, never too young to have a medical directive document and a will, and then to add long-term care insurance. And Mr. Holtis says that he has a paid up long-term care insurance
Ooh.
policy.
Oh,
Um,
congratulations.
so I
Someone
think
made some
that's
smart decisions. Yeah,
yeah, that sounds great. Dawn, I'm going to, if you don't mind, I want to share something from my screen. And as I get that ready,
please.
because it's Caregiver Month, and because
Yes.
you're talking about such great resources here, we want to remind everyone that we have a new study at the ADRC that is specifically about caregiving. And we are especially focusing on newer caregivers. So folks who have found themselves in a caregiving role over the last, I believe, 15 to 24 months. So about the last 1 or 2 years.
Mhm.
And we're interested in knowing kind of what that experience has been like. I'll let the flyer tell you better than I can tell you. So hang on just a second. I'm going to share my screen and we can make sure everybody can see that. I hope you should see the top of the screen case study, Unmasking the Financial Burden of Alzheimer's Caregivers. It's one of those things you don't necessarily know about until you're finding yourself in the midst of being a caregiver. And along with all of the changes that cognitive change brings to a person with a diagnosis, as well as to a caregiver, we know that financial burdens can be pretty significant. And so we are asking caregivers, especially those who are new to the caregiving role, to let us know how that new role is affecting their lives and how they're doing. So we're looking for caregivers who are 18 or older and who have, I mentioned before, have become a caregiver within the last 15 to 24 months and who are living in the same household as the person with dementia or another cognitive change. And the care study will involve some virtual and confidential one-on-one interviews, and I believe those can happen in a variety of ways, including by telephone or on Zoom. And if you're here, you know how to get on Zoom. Or I believe there may be as well. And what's really nice, especially is because we're looking at financial burden and caregivers, this study does offer some compensation. So if you fit any of those criteria and you're interested, please take down the phone number, which is at the bottom of your screen here, 913-588-0555. Press option 1 or visit that URL. I'll put that in the chat. I already started typing it, so I'm going to press send so everybody can see it. And we'd love to have your participation. This study is available to caregivers across a pretty wide geographical area, I believe, because we can do the surveys and the interviews online or on the phone. So I do not believe you have to come to KU, although we're always happy to see folks at KU. So keep that in mind. If you have any questions about that, feel free to speak up now, or if you have any other questions for Dawn we've got about 8 more minutes left. Dawn, any insights about financial planning that you think might be helpful?
To your point about resources, I don't know if you are familiar with Rings of Care. Is
I
that
don't think
something?
so.
Okay, so
Tell us
Rings
more.
of Care, a friend of mine set this up, and it's a really cool online platform where you as the caregiver can put on a calendar the things you need help with, and then you send that secure link to the people in your network that are able to provide help. So the burden of being a caregiver is that you're still trying to live your own life. You may have children, you may have a spouse, a business, other things, and now you have all these additional tasks, things that need to be done. And there's only one of you. So that Rings of Care idea is that there's all these other people that if they knew how to help you, would jump in and do something. And it can be as simple as, hey, I'm bringing my kids to soccer practice on Thursday at 4 o'clock. Mom's got a doctor's appointment at Thursday at 4:30. Who can bring her? And you can put those things on the calendar, and people that are in your ring of care can sign up for them. So it's a really neat free platform to just begin coordinating so that you get more of a village that are helping you rather than feeling like you're alone. I think for a lot of caregivers, there's a feeling of like, I have to do this alone. So tap into the people around you. As far as the financial planning piece goes, it's important to have an idea of who in your life can help you with what kinds of tasks and care, and then where you might need to have money to pay someone outside to do those things. So for example, if my mother was living with me, I'm working during the daytime. So I might need to pay to have her go to an adult day center where they would provide that care while I'm away. And then in the evenings and weekends, she would be with me and I could help her. So we could get an idea of what that might cost. And then we would want to look at her finances and figure out in what order we would spend down the money or turn assets into money so that we'd have income to pay for those sorts of things. So when we're planning ahead for the future, we want to ask our parent or ourselves in that case, what resources do I have available and what plans have already been made? And so for Mr. Holtis, who has a long-term care insurance policy, those are the first dollars you're going to spend. And if you have an unlimited lifetime benefit, awesome. Not everyone does. Those are still available, but a lot of people will buy a 4 or a 6 year benefit. And it will hopefully pay for half to a third the cost of care. Usually when we're looking to buy long-term care insurance, we're not trying to pay for the entire cost of care. We want to make up the difference between what your income might be and this new caregiving cost. So there's a gap there, and that's what we're trying to fill with long-term care insurance. So I often get asked, what does it cost? What does long-term care insurance cost? And it's like buying a car. You can buy a little car, you can buy a big one, you can buy something that would be able to haul a double wide trailer and have 10 people in the back seat. And you can buy all kinds of vehicles. But it's my heartfelt belief that no one should spend more than about 5% of their income on a long-term care insurance policy. And
Mm.
that's once everything else is taken care of. So if you have someone that's making, let's say, 80 to $100,000 a year, they should not be spending more than $3,000 to $5,000 a year on a long-term care plan. And the higher end of that might be a plan that has some life insurance built into it, or like Mr. Holtis does, where he has a paid up plan. He didn't have to pay forever. Maybe he paid for 15 or 20 years and then he was done. You pay a little more up front for that, but it sure is nice to not have a bill to pay forever. So the best thing to do is consider what money you have, what order it would be spent down, and make sure that the people around you know that that's your wishes. That's how you want it done. Make a plan.
So have that hard conversation and have your Thanksgiving dinner and then have your pizza and your dessert, right? All of those things
I
can
wouldn't do
happen.
it on Thanksgiving.
Okay,
Do it,
fine.
do it, do it on Saturday or something. Have a
Okay,
wonderful time together, but while you're still gathered, make sure to have that conversation and go
very
into as much
good.
detail as you're comfortable with and know that it's not going to probably be a one-time thing. It's something you'll want to revisit every couple of years. And as your finances change, as your health changes, as your desires change, as we get closer to things happening, we tend to focus in a little bit more on what we actually want. So
Very good. Okay, we've got another comment in the chat, Dawn, and everyone. I want to call everyone's attention to. I was a sandwich, extremely disabled young adult, and a mom with dementia. And now I'm an open sandwich, which what a visual. I can definitely see that. Speaking of
yeah.
food, and having this knowledge as part of that sandwich, I'm going to insert, I think would have been and is very helpful. So I agree with
Yeah.
that comment, and we're so grateful to know that you're available, Dawn. I put in the chat the link to Rings of Care, which is very easy to remember,
Yep.
ringsofcare.org.
Rings of
Um,
care.
and I'm looking at their website right now and I see they have an 816 telephone number. So it sounds like they've got a Kansas City connection, which
Yes.
is always nice to hear. Mr. Holsis is coming through with the knowledge. As an aged parent, make sure you keep your children informed. That's right. It goes two ways. We want to close that sandwich, I think, if I can borrow our commenters' words, close that sandwich and keep all the good stuff inside. Any other questions or things you want to ask of Dawn or say to Dawn? Let us know now. I will let you all know that next week our presenter is someone who has been a caregiver for her husband, who I believe spent some time at the Veterans Home in Missouri, and she's going to share her caregiving experience, and that will essentially wrap up our caregiving month. As of course, as I said at the top of our time together, caregiving is not just 1 month; it's 366 this year, days a year. And so we're always excited to bring you information about that. The following week will be November 28th, Thanksgiving. And so we will not have a webinar that day. We'll miss you. But we are going to encourage you to, if you have not already, or even if you have, watch our film, Why, with your families and have those conversations. Why, of course, is a movie that encourages early detection, early diagnosis, encourages sticking with your family and providing support, um, is quite a motivating film, if I can say so myself, and lets people know that they are not alone. There are lots of resources available, including the KU ADRC. So we will be putting the link to watch Why in the next issues of My Alliance, so you'll be able to access it there. Another great question, Dawn, if you are a couple, can you get just one long-term policy that either of you can use?
Yes, you can. Now, when we insure two people, both of them have to be healthy enough to be approved, but we can have sort of a pool of dollars that will pay out for either person. So if one needs a lot of care, they might use up a lot of that pool, and the second person wouldn't have as much left, but it's absolutely a shareable benefit. It's a great question.
Great. And Dawn, I have a question. I can't believe it took me this long to get here. I'm sorry I didn't think of this sooner. If folks want to contact you, how can they do that?
Yeah, the best way would be to go to my website,
Okay,
safeoasisinsurance.com.
I'm going to
And
put
it's
that in
got,
the chat.
yeah, it's got my phone number, my email. You can learn a little bit about me and about the things that I do. But
Okay,
yeah, and I
great.
got that name because I really believe that, life is a journey, and
Absolutely.
there's times when we go through deserts, and
Yeah.
insurance can be that safe oasis that you stumble across to refresh and regroup.
Yes. Dawn, I got a direct message just to me that asks whether your conversation about the couples and the insurance, does that apply to married couples only?
It depends on the company.
Okay.
And with one company in specific, as long as the two people share some sort of relation, you can even get a mother-daughter policy as long as they're within 25 years of each other. So I guess the
Wow.
interesting thing I want to kind of leave you with is just just be curious. Ask all
Mhm,
of your questions because
mhm,
insurance-wise, we have a lot of options. We still have lifetime benefits. We do have some policies with guaranteed premiums, so you'll never have a rate increase. And
mhm.
depending on your health, even if you've got a few diagnoses going on, you may still qualify for a policy. So just be curious.
Okay, so it's okay to ask all those great questions, it
It
sounds
is.
like.
It is.
Um, well, very good. Thank you, Dawn. I'll put a plug in for reminding anybody that's a Medicare beneficiary that we are in the midst of Medicare open enrollment until December 7th. So this is your opportunity to look at your Medicare benefits and make some changes that will give you coverage that is effective and convenient and hopefully at a price that is workable for you. I am saying that as a Medicare educator and SHIP counselor. That means I provide free and unbiased information about Medicare. We had a webinar about Medicare and Alzheimer's disease earlier this summer. It is on our YouTube channel. Feel free to check that out and learn about specifically how Medicare and Alzheimer's disease kind of work together. And if you have questions about that, feel free to contact me for anything about Alzheimer's and Medicare or anything that might fall in line with that at the KU ADRC. Dawn, thank you so much for sharing your time and your information today. And everybody have a great week. We'll see you next week on November 21st. Have a great afternoon. Bye, everyone. Linda asks how to find the YouTube channel. Hang on, Linda. Everybody, I will put a link in the chat right now. So give me just a second. You'd think I know it by heart. I do not. But I have it saved as a bookmark on my computer. So let me just grab that for you. And we'll make sure that you have that. You also will always be able to link to our YouTube channel in the My Alliance newsletter, which comes out every Monday at 7 o'clock a.m. Central Time. Okay. I don't want to make noise talking. Okay. All right. Hang on. Here comes the YouTube link. Everyone will have this. Okay, so apparently if you click on that link that I just put in the chat, that will take you directly to our YouTube channel. Failing that, you can always also Google YouTube, KUADRC, and there we will be. Next week's subject, I had someone ask me directly, will be from another caregiver, from a caregiver who has cared for her husband long-term. We're still working out a few more details about what she'll directly address, but know that it will be caregiving related and caregiving of a partner with Alzheimer's disease. And she will be able to answer questions and share some thoughts. We'll have some more details in the Monday issue of My Alliance. So stay tuned for that. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Great to have you here. And hope you have a great rest of the day. It's not raining today, at least not in Kansas City. So enjoy that. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.